Earlier this week, the president and a bipartisan group of senators separately presented plans for immigration reform that would create a pathway to citizenship for the United States' 11 million undocumented immigrants. Today, Jose Antonio Vargas, a journalist and undocumented immigrant himself who created the Define American campaign, hosted a White House Google Hangout with Cecilia Munoz, the director of White House Domestic Policy Council, about immigration reform. Jose joins me in studio right now. Welcome to HuffPost Live.
Thank you. I'm really, really happy to finally be here.
Good to have you here. Alicia Menendez is going to be mad at me because I stole you and got to talk to you first on HuffPost
Hi,
Alicia. You were, so first of all, you were at the president's speech in Nevada earlier in the week. What was that like?
It was very interesting. It was in Las Vegas. It was at a gymnasium, at a high school gymnasium. And I didn't expect to be seated I was seated on the front row. And behind me was Janet Napolitano, which, you know, is the woman whose job it is to deport people.
Director
like
of Homeland Security, yeah.
The director of the Department of Homeland, yeah, exactly. So it was a little surreal, and I actually shook her hand, you know, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm Jose Vargas," and she's like, "I know who you are."
What was that like?
She's very nice. Well, I mean, it's a part of, you know, I mean, it's a part of the surreal nature of being an undocumented person in this country. You're like visibly invisible. Like, you all know we're here. You just don't want to know what to do with us exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the Google Hangout today. I was laughing because I was watching the Google Hangout. There were dogs barking, people were coughing, people were stuck on mute. It was like a day on HuffPost Live.
Hey, isn't that what technology is supposed to be about? All I know is I was surprised and happy to be asked by the White House to, you know, officially host this Google Plus chat.
What was your general reaction to the? I'm going to show a clip in a minute, but what was your general reaction to the overall conversation today?
You know, I mean, I think my job was to moderate it. I mean, I wish I could have just had asked more questions. Like, for example, you know, the Obama administration, is there a quota they're trying to meet? At the rate that they're going, they're deporting about 400,000 people a year. That was one question that I really wish I could have asked. I wish we could have talked about secure communities, right? Which is this program that's literally separating families and dividing families apart. So we didn't get to do that, but, you know, we had four panelists, a really good, diverse group of people. And overall, I thought Cecilia Munoz, you know, she had a job to do, and she had to answer in the way that she had to answer. But I think, to me, the big headline was when she said that, because I asked her specifically, how does the president feel that he has deported a record 1.5 million people? And Cecilia said that Congress, right, is the one actually responsible for that.
I want to ask you about this. And we have that clip lined up. Guys, let's take a look at the clip Jose's talking about deportations right now.
Well, this is my last follow-up on this, just because, as you can imagine, I've had dozens of people email me questions about the fact that the president has deported more than, about 1.5 million people now in the past 4 years, which is a record.
Right.
How does the president feel about that? You know, especially because what happens when we reach 2 million people, 2 million immigrants?
So the government's job is to do what Congress tells it to do. Congress, under the immigration laws that we've got now, Congress requires us to remove people who are removable and gives DHS, frankly, a whole lot of resources to do that job. DHS's job is to make sure they make the best possible decisions on how they use those resources. But at the end of the day, we all understand we are enforcing and implementing a system which is broken. And our primary job here is to fix it. That requires the Congress of the United States. That's something we've been trying to get Congress to do now for 4 years. And our moment has come.
So what I want to ask you about is, was that a cop-out of an answer? You asked about the president, and she answered by, and I'm paraphrasing, saying, the law is what the law is. You asked what the president feels.
Yes.
She didn't answer that question.
Yes. Well, that was a classic case of basically dodging. But again, Cecilia Munoz has a very hard job that she has to do. And I thought it was really interesting when she said that they know that the system is broken. Everybody knows that. Yes, it's her job to enforce. It's the government's job to enforce what it's enforcing. Never mind, by the way, again, that, you know, countless families are separated. Mothers, fathers, neighbors, classmates. You know, look, I mean, for me, for the president, I think this is about his legacy. right? I actually just wrote a piece for Univision about, is he going to be remembered as the president who deported 1.5 million people, or is he going to be the president that welcomed 11 million new Americans to society? Mind you, like 11 million contributing Americans who just don't have the papers to show for it.
I want to ask you about John McCain. Today, John McCain said, which is more important, LGBT or border security? I'll tell you what my priorities are. If you're going to load it up, meaning the Senate version of immigration reform, with social issues, that's the best way to derail it, in my view. The president and the bipartisan group of senators, or at least John McCain, differ on the issue of LGBT with regard to immigration reform. What's your reaction to that?
I'm sorry. It's been a very busy day. Did John McCain just compare LGBT people and try to
This is what John McCain said, quote, which is more important, LGBT or border security? This was in an event hosted by Politico. The rest of the quote is, I'll tell you what my priorities are. If you're going to load it up with social issues, that's the best way to derail it, in my view, end quote.
That's a staggering quote. Look, I'm undocumented, and I also happen to be gay. Actually, Stephen Colbert, I was in a show, and he said I was border gay. He asked me if I was border gay, which was kind of funny.
You were great on that show.
Oh, thanks, but it was kind of funny. But I actually think, again, this is the president that last week gave the most inclusive inaugural address in the history of the American presidency, right? Connecting Seneca, Selma to Stonewall, right? Immigration is an LGBT issue, right? There are undocumented LGBT Americans in this country. Same-sex binational couples are being separated because of this broken law. Those two things you can't separate those two things. It's not like you choose, do we want to... My being gay is not a social issue. It's a fact. It is not something to be debated. It's a reality. I think the fact that, look, Senator McCain is a leader, and he's a leader of a border state, which means that, he understands the complexity of this issue. And I really hope that as we have this debate, as we have this conversation, a conversation, by the way, that is all about defining who an American is, that we really have the tough conversations here about, this is not a choice about being a border or being, succumbing to social issue versus, border security. Mind you, and this is the other thing that I think is so important to point out, the border, this border in our minds, this border that we've spent, $187 billion since 1987 or something like that? How many kids, by the way, could we have educated with $107 billion? Immigration is not just a border issue. I come from the Philippines, I got here on a plane. The Pacific Ocean was my border. So when they say border security, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Second, what is it about, what exactly are we enforcing and who exactly are we keeping out? I think those are really hard questions. And third, my being gay, the fact that I can't marry my way into citizenship like straight people can, right? Like I can get married in the state of New York where I live, but because of the Defense of Marriage Act, the federal government, which hands out visas, won't recognize my marriage.
There are so many issues. It is so complex, and the work that you've been doing is so admirable. I wish we had more time today, but I know you'll come back. I know you'll come back on HuffPost
with Alicia.
Live with Alicia Menendez.
With Alicia Menendez.
And I want to get in a comment, and then we're going to wrap from Jake Brewer, who we both know. Immigration is about all of us. These aren't separate conversations. Jose Antonio Vargas, thank you for coming in studio.
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it. Everybody stick around. Nancy Red's coming up next. She's going to take us out for the rest of the day.